The president also saying that he's announcing secondary sanctions on any buyers of Iranian oil. So he says here that all purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now. So any country that buys any amount of either of those products from Iran will not be allowed to do any business with the United States of America in any way, shape, or form.
Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, the title of this article says, this is the biggest economic story of 2025 so far. Well, I believe that this will be the biggest story of a generation. And the reason for that is that every 80 to 100 years or so, there is a major war cycle. Now, when you hear about war, you think about boots on ground. You think about kinetic happenings going on. But we are in a war right now. And this war will determine what happens to the standard of living of the average American going forward. I'm not sure if you've heard, but President Trump announced that any country that purchases oil from Iran will be sanctioned and cut off from being able to trade with the United States. And unfortunately, to that matter, China just happens to purchase about 90 or 95% of all the oil that it uses from Iran. Will they stop purchasing oil from Iran? That is yet to be seen. But the time to prepare for the shock, if it does occur, is now. The President of the United States just threatened to end all trade with China if China does not stop buying oil from Iran. This is really happening. President Trump has decided to raise the level of economic pressure on Iran to the maximum in the last-ditch effort to force the Iranians to make a deal to end their nuclear program. So he is threatening to completely cut off all trade with any nation that purchases any amount of Iranian oil. Alert from Donald J. Trump. All purchases of Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now, he says. Any country or person who buys any amount of oil or petrochemicals from Iran will be subject to immediately secondary sanctions. They will not be allowed to do business with the United States of America in any way, shape, or form. And then he says, thank you. And I think he ironcladded this, what I would say, threat to any country or person that purchase Iranian oil. Because there's ways to get around these sanctions, right, ladies and gentlemen? Just like when Russia was selling oil to India and India was selling it to Europe, right, to the EU. You know, that was a way to get around it. The EU was still getting what they needed as far as their energy needs go, but they were paying a lot more. But nonetheless, they were getting oil from Russia just through a third party. Well, not this way. They won't be able to. China, I mean. And they continue to say, quote, these sanctions are being imposed pursuant to President Trump's maximum pressure campaign to drive Iran's oil exports, including to China, to zero. China is by far the largest importer of Iranian oil. The Iranian regime uses the revenue it generates from these sales to finance attacks on U.S. allies, support terrorism around the world, and pressure other destabilizing actions. In 2025, approximately 90% of all Iranian oil exports went to China. And Iranian oil exports to China hit a record high of 1.8 million barrels per day just back in March. What do you think is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen? Well, the way I see it is, let's not wait for it to happen. Let's get prepared for this now. And now a quick word from the sponsor of this video, SIMPURE. Ladies and gentlemen, I've talked about this in the past, but I'm pretty certain that most people don't know this information. Consumer Report recently tested 47 bottled waters, including 35 non-carbonated and 12 carbonated options, and found levels of toxic PFAS chemicals in several popular brands that were above a limit recommended by some experts. These chemicals are called forever chemicals because the way that they are put together, it is hard for them to break down, so they last very, very long. We are advocating to both the FDA and EPA that they look at putting mandatory standards for PFASs for all water that consumers would drink. And my question is this, ladies and gentlemen, Why would we wait for the EPA or the FDA to protect us from poisoned water? And that's exactly what it is as they describe it here. Let me quickly show you how you can avoid ever again buying bottled water. This is what I do. I use my SIMPURE countertop reverse osmosis system to fill these bottles that are made out of glass, by the way. Every day I go through at least 3 of these bottles, so I go ahead and wash them at the end of the day, and I refill them every morning before I start my day. It's as simple as that. Not only is it cost effective in my opinion, pretty much you're going to save what you spend on bottled water, and you will know for a fact that your water is clean. So if you want to have clean water that you know is clean, and you're not just being told that it's clean, check out SIMPURE. I will be leaving their link on a pinned comment, along with a coupon code that will allow you to save 21% off your purchase on anything on their site. Make sure that you go check out SIMPURE because they are having a Mother's Day sale that is actually bigger and better than the 21% that I offer with my coupon code. China isn't going to stop buying oil from Iran. This is the author talking here. I hope that I'm wrong about that, but I don't believe that I am. And how could you expect them to, ladies and gentlemen, when they rely on them for 90% of their oil imports? So it appears that we are about to see a full shutdown of all trade with China. This is serious. I know that people are jumping up and down saying, yes, great. It's a great thing. But you just don't understand, if you're one of those people, how much we actually rely on China imports. Most Americans have absolutely no idea what this will mean for us. Estimates show that 90% of the inputs in prescription drugs, and I've talked about this before, consumed in the U.S. are imported. A significant portion of that comes from China, making it a major supply chain risk. This is a really big deal, they say, and I agree, because as I have discussed previously, more than 60% of all U.S. adults are currently taking at least one RX medication, and I also covered that on a previous video. America is the most drug-dependent nation or the most medicated nation in the world, and we only make about 5% of the world population. According to supply chain analytics company Exiger, about 80% of the active ingredients in our pharmaceuticals come from China. What happens if they cut us off? What happens when we have no antibiotics? What happens when we have no insulin? Etc., etc., etc. Get prepared now. And if there is a complete shutdown of trade with China, we will experience a drug shortage like we've never seen before. He says he wishes that he was exaggerating, but he is not. And I believe him 100%. Even 95% of our ibuprofen comes from China. It's only ibuprofen, right? Until you don't have it and you really need it. Good luck getting ibuprofen when none is coming across the Pacific Ocean. Of course, there will be shortages in countless other industries as well. Do a little mental or actual exercise in your home. Go ahead and check everything that you have and see how many of those things come or were made from China, ladies and gentlemen. We live in a throwaway society. There's not many places that fix stuff anymore because we're going to have to go back to a fix-it society instead of a throwaway society. So things coming from China over the last 3.5 decades or so, they've been so inexpensive that people don't care. They just throw it away and go buy another one. Why would I spend half an hour driving to the repair shop, half an hour driving back, paying the repairman to fix it, when I can just throw it away, go to Walmart and buy another one? He continues to say, quote, "I hate to say it, but our economy literally cannot function normally without Chinese-made goods. We should never have allowed this to happen, but this is the reality of the scenario that we are now facing." Yes, we can all thank the government back in, I believe it was between 95 and 2001, that did two things, that enacted NAFTA into law and that allowed China to enter into the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And that is what allowed companies to take all of our manufacturing out of the United States of America and bring it overseas, not only decimating our manufacturing workforce, but making us as a nation reliant on other nations in order for us to get the goods that we depend on to live the standard of living that we do. The good news is that it appears that Chinese are still leaving the door open for potential deal. And they're smart to do so, because if you haven't seen what's going on in China, just go ahead and search it on YouTube and you'll see that people there are starting to protest against the government in masses. Hopefully the US and China will sit down and talk, and hopefully both sides will be in a mood to make significant compromises. Because if we stay on the path that we are currently on, it will be a nightmare. Even before the trade war erupted about a month ago, many US consumers were stocking up on anticipation of the coming tariffs. Make sure you stock up, but don't hoard. Don't go out there and get 50-pound bags of rice, ladies and gentlemen. You should have been doing this slow and steady throughout the years. However, crises don't last forever. This will eventually fix itself, either the easy way or the hard way. The easy way being that they make a deal, and then maybe we feel a little bit of a pinch for a few months for the supply system to recharge itself, or the hard way, where they don't make a deal and we have to wait years before manufacturing fully develops back into our nation and we can provide for ourselves those things that we need. And this is not hyperbole, ladies and gentlemen. If all trade with China is suddenly brought to a screeching halt, it is going to throw our society into a state of great chaos. Let me know what you think about this. Remember, go check out SIMPURE and check out the other affiliates that I work with, because they're all having sales of different types. Go check out Jase Medical. I've talked about them in previous videos, where you can get a 1-year supply of your RX medication to make sure that you can rotate through it and know that you will always have a 1-year supply in addition to whatever your doctor prescribes you. Go check out Nutrient Survival, the very best freeze-dried food in the industry. And they are the very best. Why? Because no one can match their nutrition. And I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you very much for joining in today. I really do appreciate every single one of you that spends a few minutes of your day checking out the videos that I put out. So thank you very much. God bless every one of you. God bless America. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out.